Welcome to a new session on ethics. In this session, we can have a look on ethical views of Plato. We have with us Dr. Nasi, former professor and head, Department of Philosophy, University of Kerala. Once again, I welcome you, ma'am, for this session.
Thank you, Sabina. Coming to the ethics of Plato. Plato can be considered as the first systematic philosopher in the history of philosophy. He is a student of Socrates, the greatest Greek philosopher, who has actually contributed to the development of the science of ethics. It is said that Socrates has brought philosophy down from the heavens to the earth, meaning that he is the philosopher who began to think of a human being, the nature of human being, the life of a human being in the field of philosophy for the first time. So, two of his statements are very meaningful. One, he said that the unexamined life is not worth living. The second is virtue is knowledge. So, these two statements summarizes the ethical philosophy of Socrates, and his student Plato has taken initiative, taken inspiration from the ethics of his master and continued to develop ethics into a very full-fledged discipline. So, in Plato we can find the full-fledged version of the ethical theory initiated by Socrates. Okay? Now, one thing to be said at the beginning is that apart from being an ethical thinker, Plato is a typical metaphysician. His main interest is in developing a metaphysical theory, and the ethical theory is only at the culmination, only as an appendix to his metaphysical theory. In his metaphysics, Plato makes a distinction between appearance and reality, saying that the whole external world can be presumed under what is called appearance, and reality is that which lies behind it, behind and beyond the appearance. And appearance means all the physical entities, all the physical objects, including human beings, and reality does not belong to it. Reality belongs to a different realm, and in Platonian terminology we can say it is the world of ideas.
World of ideas.
And theory of ideas is considered to be the metaphysical theory of Plato, and this point has got a great bearing upon the ethical theory of Plato. This dualistic conception of reality, the appearance of material objects and the real nature of the reality. So, this kind of a dualistic concept Plato applies to the field of ethics also, that he says that in each human being we can find a dual aspect. A human being is actually a combination of the physical body and the non-physical soul, corresponding to what is called the world of appearance and the world of world of ideas or world of reality. So, there is a physical body in a human being, and also that there is a non-physical soul. So, we cannot say that man is a physical body alone or he is a non-physical soul alone. Actually, he is a combination of these two entities. A human being means a physical body and a non-physical soul. And therefore, Plato says that since the body belongs to the field of appearance, and soul belongs to the field or level of reality. The goal of human life is the well-being of the soul, well-being of reality, not the appearances. So, a duty of a man is to work for, to aspire for the well-being, the attainment of soul or the reality. So, the metaphysical principle has been applied in the field of ethics, saying that appearance is not something to be aspired for. We have to aspire for the reality. And in the human field, the reality is the soul. So, the goal of human life is the attainment or realization of soul. So, that is the sum and substance of the ethical theory of Plato. Now, we come to the details. Okay. Now, in developing the ethical theory, Plato will say that the human soul can be said to consist of 3 elements, or we can say 3 parts. The human soul can be attributed to have 3 parts. He says the rational part, the reason, the spiritual part, the spirit, and the appetitive part. Okay. So, these are supposed to be the 3 parts of human soul: the reason, the spirit, the appetite. Now, he goes to explain this.
So, this is the tripartite division of the soul in his theory.
Actually, this is the tripartite division, dividing the soul into 3 parts, namely the rational part, the spiritual part, and the appetitive part. Now, one thing to remember is that this is a gradual division. So, from the lowest to the highest, or we can say from the highest to the lowest. So, appetite forms the lowest, spirit the middle, and the rational part forms the highest. So, that is the classification in the graduated form. Okay. He says that reasoning is the part capable of reasoning and pursues truth and knowledge. The rational part, which is the highest part of the soul, or let us say the goal of soul. Now, the function of the rational part is the reasoning, thinking, okay, deliberating. So, that kind of activity is performed by the rational part, and it pursues truth and knowledge. This rationality or this reasoning results in the attainment of truth or knowledge. So, this is the importance of the rational part of soul. Now, spiritual part is the part that proud and concerned with one's own status. So, second part, the middle portion of the soul is concerned with, it is concerned with keeping the status. So, keeping the position of a human being. It pursues fame and power. See, I want to be in a position or in power, like that. So, the spiritual part of the soul is very conscious of the power element or the fame element of a human life. Appetite, which is the largest and most powerful part of the soul, pursues pleasures. So, we can say that the rational part is the very silent part. It works silently, or it is the weakest part. It does not exert itself. Okay. The spiritual part, of course, it exerts, but it has got a purpose of attaining fame and power. Okay. Whereas, the appetitive part of the soul is the largest or the most powerful, let us say, because it pursues pleasure all the time and tries to avoid pain. It does not like pain. A human being all the time tries to avoid pain and tries to attain pleasure. And this element or this function of the soul is performed by the appetitive soul. And that is why it is said that appetite is the most powerful part. Since it is the lowest part, it is the largest part of the soul, it is the most powerful part of the soul, it aspires for attainment of pleasure and avoiding pain. The second part is the spiritual part. Now, it is all the time after fame, money, power and so on. So, it wants to keep the status, never wants to go down or wants to go up, and the highest part is the rational part. Let us say it is a silent part, but it is the noblest part. Okay? After doing this, Plato wanted to apply this classification of soul into his political, his epistemological and his metaphysical theory, even in his ethical theory. So, this is a classification of human soul in general, and this theory he applies in the field of morality along with his metaphysical as well as political and epistemological theories. Now, Platonist theory of soul, this Platonic division of soul,
tripartite division
of soul, this has got a dramatic impact on the moral theory of Plato, because this he applies it in the field of ethics and it has made it meaningful, more meaningful. Now, Plato's theory can be said to be a theory of self-realization. We can classify, we can name the ethics of Plato as an ethics of self-realization. Now, this ethics of self-realization is quite opposite to the hedonistic theory, or it is anti-hedonistic. We know the hedonistic theory means that a theory which tries to attain pleasures, a theory which says that the goal of human life is the attainment of pleasure. That is what is called a hedonistic theory. So, right from the time of Greek, even before Plato, this theory was prevalent. And Plato knows about that. Now, he comes to theory and says that this is not the goal of life. Pleasure can never be the goal of life according to Plato. And he therefore incorporates another goal of human life, saying that the goal and purpose of every human being is to attain his own realization, namely self-realization, the most important theory of ethics in our own time. So, even after Plato has propounded this theory has got prominence in such a way that even today people are there advocating the theory of self-realization, supposed to be one of the best theories in ethics. So, that is the importance of the ethics of Plato. So, Plato's theory of ethical self-realization is accepted even today's time. Even today's philosophers follow this theory and they try to develop on that. Thus, Plato's ethics is relevant even today, and it can be a sound basis for a moral theory or for the modern man. Now, according to Plato, the soul's part has functions in a hierarchical order. So, we have seen that the soul has got three parts. The highest is the rational part, spiritual part, and the lowest is the appetitive part. And accordingly, these parts of soul are attributed with functions. Each part has got its own function to perform. Each part of the soul has its function and place in the hierarchical order. That is what we have seen. Appetite is the lowest, spirit is the middle, and the rational is the highest. This means that for good conduct, a rational soul should reign supreme and exercise effective control over the other parts of the soul. So, this is the meaning of a good character or good man. Means in a good man, the rational part of the soul must reign supreme, even though it is the most silent one. You have seen the nature of the rational part is a very silent, it is the weakest one. But Plato will say that to be good, if a man wants to be good, his life must be directed and controlled by the rational part. Okay? So, that is the function of that part of soul called the rationality. So, first he says that every part of soul has its own function. So, the function of the rational part is to guide and to control the whole of human personality, to guide and control both spiritual part as well as the appetitive part. So, that is supposed to be the function of the rational part. Then similarly, the ignoble, the irrational soul must be under the domination of the noble part of the soul. Not only that, the rational part must control the spiritual part. The lowest part must also be under its control, namely the appetitive soul. That is the ignoble soul. The appetitive part of the soul, we have seen it is the most powerful part of the soul, because it is after all pleasures, enjoyment of pleasures. Now, this part of the soul must also be under the control of the rational part. That only that personality is the ideal personality. So, in the life of an ideal personality, the rational part must reign supreme, and the other two parts must be under the control of the rational part. Thus, Plato believes that the essence of moral life is governance of the lower by the higher. See, governance of the lower by the higher. The higher element, the higher principle must exercise its power, its authority in controlling and dominating the lower parts. Now, see this, now according to Plato, this produces harmony in life. I mean, this is the ideal state of life, or this is the perfect state of life, where the higher elements control and the lower elements obey. Okay? The higher elements are dominating and the higher elements are subordinating. So, this is the ideal state of life. And one thing to remember is that Plato applies this principle to the society, to the state.
He created an ideal state.
Yes. So, this principle of the higher principle, the higher controlling and governing the lower. So, that is the principle that he has developed from the nature of soul. So, that is the importance of Plato. Plato develops the principle from a metaphysical background. So, first he studies the soul, he analyzes it, saying that it has got three parts: the rational, spiritual and appetitive, and then coming to say that the function of the rational soul is to control and guide the other parts. So, meaning that the higher principle has to control the lower. So, this is a metaphysical principle developed from the background of the soul, study of soul. Now, what Plato does is apply this principle to the field of politics, or he is speaking of the ideal state with this principle, that will come later. Okay.